Hi, guys. This is Dr. Lanier, entrepreneur dentist. Hopefully, you are as well or want to be an entrepreneur. So, today we're doing an interview with my real estate agent who's been finding me property for quite a few years. I'm going to ask him when he comes on about how many years we've been working together. But this is a integral part of what we do is finding location. And you remember the phrase location, location, location. And when I look for locations, and now we're doing Central California, and when I look for locations, I turn to this guy, Nick Frechot. Did I pronounce your last name? Let's bring him on and get it. It's a French last name. Is it French?
It is. Good morning, Dr. Lanier. Thank you for having me, and I'm thrilled to be on your podcast this morning. It's great to see you again.
Good. Great to see you, Nick. And how many years you think we've been working together?
I went back and found our old email chain since February 2017. I got a very generic LoopNet lead from you inquiring on a property, followed up on a phone call, and you and I seem to hit it off and have been transacting properties ever since.
Wow, 2017. That was the year that I sold Kids Dental Care, and I was supposed to have been retiring. I don't know what the hell I was doing calling you at that time. Right? And I'm supposed to be retiring, but I think what it was, I wanted to invest in what I knew, and what I know is dental offices and the real estate that comes with that. But anyway, let's introduce you. Tell us a little bit about you, Nick. Go into a little bit of your bio.
Yeah, again, my name is Nick Freshew. I work with Retail California as a senior vice president and a partner in the company. We are the Central California's largest commercial real estate agency in terms of transaction volume. We represent tenants looking for new space, buyers looking to make an investment. We represent landlords looking for new tenants or landlords that are looking to sell their commercial retail properties. We operate Fresno South down to Bakersfield and Fresno North up to Sacramento, and we cover the Central Coast areas as well in between those two northern and southern boundaries.
Exclusively commercial real estate.
Yes, exclusively commercial real estate. And in a nutshell, if you benefit from high traffic, high visibility locations, or if you own high traffic, high visibility locations, we should be able to add some value for you in one facet or another.
There you go. And that's how I met Nick, because I was looking at properties and I kept seeing it not only on LoopNet, but I think I saw his signs in areas that I was riding around. And I said, well, let me call this guy. And we just hit it off. And since then, it took a little while at first. And this is the thing, I had a point I wanted to tell young doctors. If you're looking to expand, you do want to kind of train the person to know what you like. Because at first, he was giving me different things, and after a while, I was like, I kept rejecting certain things, and then he said, "I know what you like now." And that's the thing of working with the same person over a period of time. It's just after a while, he would send me just what he knew would set me off. It was like, that's a property that would fit your. How was your mindset on that? Talk about that, Nick.
Yeah, the more detail that we can get from the client upfront, the more spot on we can be with our site selection process. It's important to know who the target customer and demographic is. It's important to know if you have a desired traffic count that you're after. It's important to know if you have any access requirements, if a left in is important to you to get into your property. If it's important to you that customers can easily get out of your property and back on the road. If your customer identifies and likes to see you at a lighted intersection, these are all things that we like to know up front and try to take into account in our site search. But yeah, there are definitely growing pains with each client, and we learn as we go, and we try to modify our search accordingly.
Yeah, and we've so I think we're working on number 6 together. Number 6 for dental offices. All of them have been standalone, which I like, and we have acquired the properties. These last 2 we're working on have a lease purchase in those. So I don't do. We haven't personally done just leases. which a lot of young dentists getting started are looking to lease, and it makes sense versus to purchase each time, especially if you're expanding really fast. But a good thing to do, because the lenders will, is to purchase a building and build out your practice there. You own the building, or you're paying down the building. You never really own it. You kind of control it, but you get the benefit of leverage off the building and a lot of things. So I'm going to go into a few questions I start thinking about. One, just to mention to the doctors out there, is everything is about location, location, location. And that accessibility, freeway, ingress, egress, visibility, like Nick said, traffic count. And what is the thing that happened? The Fresno, the hotel is behind the property, and he had the right, what is that called, to pass through the property?
The easement.
Easement, yes. So that was, there's a lot of terms you learn as you go along. And that's something that he pretty much, the city, and I guess in a lot of places, if your property is blocked off, because in North Carolina, I saw a similar thing with my brothers, where someone owned property behind their property, but they still had to have rights to easement. I guess it just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, with us, Nick, we found some beautiful sites. Talk about some of those locations and how you came about knowing that this was what we were looking for.
Yeah, Dr. Lanier, your specific site search was a tough one, but you gave me plenty of runway. You gave me plenty of markets to look in, but your product type was the most rare, which was a well-located, in most cases, a freestanding building with plenty of parking and high visibility. More than 9 times out of 10, buildings are worth more money when they have income and a tenant in place, as opposed to that property owner selling it vacant. And these well-located buildings, most of the times, those particular building owners would rather find a tenant if their end motivation is to sell, because the value of the property is going to be going up. So that's what makes the search so difficult. So it was very helpful to have a longer runway in terms of number of markets that I could search in to find you your desired product. And it was great that you had that level of flexibility to look in. Fresno, Visalia, Delano, Porterville, had plenty of properties in markets to keep my eye on for you.
And then with looking for dental, a lot of times zoning is something you have to look out for. There needs to be zone. Is it the same everywhere? What's the zoning zone? What is it?
No. Each municipality is going to have its own set of zoning ordinances and standards. As a dental operator, it's going to be very important that you research those up front. The last thing that you're going to want to do is end up in a dead rent scenario where you're obligated to start paying rent and triple net obligations on your location, and you're nowhere close to opening. That's the worst case scenario. So you need to do your zoning inquiry up front. See if it requires a conditional use permit or if your use is allowable by right. And also get a good team in place, a good broker, a good architect, a good contractor that can educate you from A to Z how long it's going to take you to get open.
Yeah. And then I want to interject with the contractor, something I didn't do, and all of these years, and I've been building out a lot, but I've never had a liquidated damages clause. Use it. Also get a good real estate attorney, because everything has to be done correct. You can't make any mistakes, because like Nick said, you're locked in. I was one of the guys that I'm mentoring. I went to see his office here in LA. It was post-COVID, and he had been paying rent all through COVID, but he couldn't get the supplies. He couldn't. So he had signed the lease, and the lease started. I'm at the point now, if you're going to start my lease, I want it when I have the certificate of occupancy. And it takes about 10 to 12 months to build out a dental offices. You have to find some way, whether it's rent abatement or TIs. And I'll let Nick talk about that, rent abatement and TIs, and what's normal, how you work on that.
Yeah, and that's a delicate balance that you just mentioned in between, the zone and when you're starting, you've signed a lease and you're working on getting towards opening, right? And it's an education process between landlord and tenant, because the landlord is going to want to be getting his rental payments and triple net payments as quickly as possible, and he's going to try to drop the hammer. And you need to have an educated team in place that can say, hold on, we can't start paying rent that quickly. Here's why. And it really is a constant battle, because everybody is pointing the finger at one another, because the landlord typically says, well, I need an actual end date when you're going to start paying rent. And the tenant will often say, well, what if the third party municipality will say the city of Fresno in this instance doesn't process our permits quickly enough? And it's a little bit of a blame game, and it's a constant battle almost on every transaction. It's something we run into frequently.
Yeah. And that's something that that's when I'm going back and forth with the real estate attorney and saying, I need this in here, because I know, and then I built out enough to know it could take a lot of times to get the permit. And then it can take, it's varied with the time the contractor can finish building. But that's why I say, if you put in a liquidated damages clause in there, that holds the contractor liable, and that way he has to start paying if he goes over his date. But what about the city? You can't control the city. Some places are easy, some places aren't.
Yes. Here locally, I typically operate 60 days or 2 months to draw plans, 4 to 6 months for plan check comments, and depending on the size of the project, 4 to 6 months for construction. Those are the generalized dates that
those aren't normally not the construction of a dental offices. Those are normally just regular retail or something like that is easy. Dental offices is going to take a lot longer than your average build out.
Yeah, depends on the size of the project, certainly. Yep.
Yeah. So that's where I want to make sure that my proteges are listening. It's going to take you a little while to build it out, and you have to know what the city is permitting. Get to know the city, how long the process, and that way, when you're getting ready to sign the lease or the lease purchase, you can work and negotiate. You have to have something to negotiate. But once you sign, that's the thing. I've learned the lesson. My attorney would always say, once you sign, it's a little bit late to call me, isn't it? It's you gotta work those things out before you before you sign the dotted line. So it's like go back and forth, and sometimes, and most of the time, it is the real estate agent that you work through the standard lease. But if you're growing a lot and you're building, you want to bring the lawyers in and go through some other things. So the standard lease, let's talk about that, Nick. Standard AR, what is it called? AR lease?
Standard AIR form lease. That's our most widely used industry standard lease across California, that has kind of the battle-hardened provisions that try to stand fairly neutral between landlord and tenant across a broad range of subjects that could come up during your marriage to your landlord.
Yeah. And I think if a person knows what they want, then I think you guys as good agents, you can handle all of that. If they come up, it's when you really get down to some hard negotiations, and the other side only wants to use their they want to talk through their attorney. You have to talk through your attorney. And that's when attorney to attorney kind of comes in play and making it happen.
Yeah, it really depends on the operators in play. Sometimes the landlord will have its own standard form. The tenant may have its own standard form. If it's especially a large company like Starbucks, for example, they're going to have their own standard lease form. They're not going to use an AIR. And it really just depends on the complexity of the transaction as well. We're comfortable in draft leases on AIR all the time, but there's been instances as well where I've felt a little uncomfortable and felt the need to get an attorney involved. So it just really is case by case for each transaction.
Yeah. I think that in most of my career, I haven't had attorneys involved. It was only recently, when I started after I started growing quite a bit and made some mistakes. Then I started going with the real estate agent to get to a certain point and then just get the blessings of the real estate attorney. And when we are talking to you guys listening, if you're doing real estate and you're going to call an attorney, make sure it's a real estate attorney. Don't just call accident attorney friend or something like that to look over the real estate deal. Hopefully they would let you know, but just be aware that that's something you don't want to do. The other things I wanted to cover, sometimes in like parking requirements, especially for medical dental, it could vary, I guess, depending on municipality. How's that working?
Yeah, it does. Each city will have its own code. Dental, I would say, normally is 5 stalls per 1,000 square feet. It's not a very parking intensive use in most cases. As opposed to restaurants, you'll normally see 10 stalls per 1,000 square feet. You'll see, just mentioning parking, some retailers may request exclusive parking stalls in front of their business so that their patrons can come in and out very easily and that those stalls don't get congested. Time stalls is also another hot topic. If you can't get exclusive stalls, sometimes the landlord will come back and say, well, we'll grant short-term parking 15 minutes just so that there's a high rate of turnover right in front of the businesses and the stalls aren't clogged. So those are things that we run into in the negotiation process pretty frequently.
Yeah, I guess it would differ in city to city. The bigger the city, the more stringent it could become because it's the tighter and the need for parking, and you'd have to come up with something different. Makes sense. But yeah. Now that is where a lot of times do run into problems is a city planning. Each one kind of has its own code, and yeah, I think the one in Delano, which may have been one of the earlier ones that we started looking at. I'm still working. It's the only one I'm still working on that we still haven't gotten the certificate of occupancy. They sent us after COVID. They sent us through all kinds of stuff, and then they outsourced all of their permit and brought in new people. And yeah, that's been rough. That's been a rough ride. Okay. So we talked about a few things. Oh, what we're working on now, just to inform you guys, Nick and I are working on 2 projects simultaneously now, whereas we just did an LOI on one, but the other we're almost ready to sign the lease purchase option, which is something that I think I needed in this case. And we had initially let's talk about the Clovis property just a little bit. We had talked about that about 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, right?
Yes, we did. It's a location that was identified quite some time ago. The landlords when we first started talking about it, are large landlords across the country. They had an existing relationship, or so they thought, with an urgent care operator across their portfolio that they thought they were going to plug into this location. And it ended up coming back around to us, which, was a great windfall. And, 3 years later, Dr. Lanier was still lying in wait and looking for locations. And it turned out working out just fine for us.
Yeah. Clovis is one that I think strategically, and that's the way I try to do some concentric marketing to a certain area. So I'm doing Central California, and what brought me there was doing a demographic survey and going based on what I thought that the government, because we service a lot of kids, and half the kids in California are covered by Medicaid. So we service quite a few of those. 50% of the kids in the state are covered by Medicaid, and they want you to go to certain underserved areas. And it's the Central California area is the area they were pointing to. I live in LA, but something say go to Central California. So I have to go there and find properties and open them, set them up, and get them open to bring dentists there and build a staff and so forth. So I can't ride there all of the time. And if Nick is looking, he's sending me things. Now that he knows what I like, I can use, and now you can use Google Earth. We're making an offer on Sacramento. I haven't even been to Sacramento in years, but I'm going to go there and look at it before we do a final. I'll fly in there and take a look. But I can see so much from Google Earth and what's going on. Which one were we talking about? Delano.
Delano was the first property that you had purchased, still in planning, and then we graduated to Clovis, and we're talking about Sacramento as well.
Yeah, Sacramento. Yeah, well, Sacramento is one that I think is very interesting, and I wanted to use that one too as and both that and Clovis, we're looking at a lease purchase option. So that I don't know how often you actually do that, Nick, but right now it just makes sense for me because I'm trying to finish Delano. I want to do Clovis. I want to do Sacramento. And, but Delano haven't started bringing in money. I got to get that one started and get some cash going. I can work on the build out during the lease, but I'd like to purchase them because I'm at that stage, whereas I only pretty much do purchases right now. So we have to bring in the attorney bin and work on really a lease purchase option. And it takes a little bit, right? And we've been going back and forth on that.
It does. And it's a deal structure that I actually haven't seen before. I've got to give you and your genius the credit for this one. It's not a typical right of first offer or right of first refusal that we normally see. What you've crafted is essentially a modified seller carry in my eyes. And what we've negotiated, we're working on Sacramento, but what we did successfully negotiate in Clovis is a lease where all of the terms of the lease are set in stone and you execute a lease. And then on the back end, you've got an acquisition price and a time to acquire the property at that set price. So what you've essentially done is you've set your price in stone at a price per square foot that you're comfortable with, that allows you to use your forced appreciation method and value add on the building as you start generating income and rent on your particular space. So it's very clever and it worked great in Clovis. I hope we can pull it off in Sacramento as well.
Yeah, I like that. I actually did an option years ago with a dentist friend of mine. I wound up backing out of that. I kept it and tried to make it work. One of the few offices I could not make work, or I had too much going on at the time. For some reason, it did not work. But I think that having the option, especially now, once I do the build out, I don't want to just give it to someone else and enhance their property. Since I'm doing all of this, I'd like to buy it, but give me a chance to get it started, make a little money, and then I'll take it if you're willing to wait and let us do that. But I do need those three. So there are three things I try to put in there now is one, give me time to get the permit and then give me 12 months to do the build out. Now that's rent abatement, 12 months or whichever comes first to get the certificate of occupancy. And now once we get the certificate of occupancy, I can start working and making money. And then I can, from there, I can purchase the property 1 year later because it's already rocking and rolling. The money is coming in. What lender wouldn't want to lend money on a practice that's already built out, making money? And now, only thing I'm asking, do you want to finance the property? Of course they would. So I think that's Nick called it the genius. It's just what I needed right then. So, and you search around and see if we can't make it happen. So they were able to make it happen once. I said, well, if it happened then, let's see if we could do it again. So that's what we're working on with Sacramento. We did a LOI on that. And can you explain for the novices out there what an LOI is?
LOI stands for a letter of intent. And at a broad stroke, it's just the basic business terms that you submit to a landlord or a seller. Just spells out generally who you are, how long you'd like to lease the space for, how much you plan to occupy, what are the economic concessions that you're asking for, et cetera, et cetera. It's a very short, typically 2-page document or so, depending on its complexity, that allows you to get the most basic business terms out of the way before you start going into a more binding lease or purchase agreement document.
Totally non-binding.
Yes, non-binding, and it's I guess dating before marriage, essentially.
Yeah, it's kind of like that's what I was thinking. It's kind of dating before marriage. So yeah, that's a good one. Let me. There was a couple of other things I wanted to ask you about. This one. Well, I'll come back to this. Well, no, let's talk about cap rates and let's explain because cap rates are always kind of confusing to most people. I think if you can kind of explain cap rates and the significance of cap rates to someone who's interested in buying, I guess it wouldn't matter if you're just leasing. Just
Yeah, a cap rate is essentially a snapshot in time return on your investment annually. That's really what it is. We've seen a great relationship with cap rates and interest rates. Lately, interest rates have been going up at a fairly rapid rate, which means property values have been going down and the return has been going up. As interest rates are now starting to drop, I see a nice window where you can come in and get a great value on a property at a relatively affordable interest rate. So we're really liking this time frame right now, and it's a great time to go out and acquire commercial real estate property.
And that is part of the thing that's motivating me right now. And I see that one, the since the rates have gone up, property values stalled for a while, and now the interest rates are starting to come down. But a year from now, 2 years, I kind of anticipate, I don't know exactly where it's going to be, but if things go according to where it looks like it's going now, interest rates will be significantly less than what they are now. And if I could lock in the price right now, and then actually in a year, 2 years down the road, could buy it at that same price, and when interest rates are lower, it's hard to lose on something like that, right?
I never like to use guarantees like hard to lose or anything like that, especially when making such a big financial commitment. But yeah, we do our best to educate the operators on all of the risks associated. But yeah, I think we see a significant window here in time where rates are starting to go down. Property owners have seen the writing on the wall and have been beaten up as interest rates have been continuing to climb. And yeah, we think that there's a great window in time here to acquire and potentially refinance in the future if rates continue to drop.
I like the way you kind of wiggle out of that. Don't like yourself. Didn't
mean to be too much of a politician on you there. Yeah.
But I don't gamble. Really, I go to Vegas and I like going to hang out, spend some money, doing some things. My wife kind of pulled the slot, but I don't gamble. I do take risk and very calculated risk. So that's why I'm saying my timing and looking at where we are, where we've been. We were COVID and everything, so the rates had to go up. A lot of times people think it was politics or whatever, but you have to get past this thing. And I was reading about these commercial properties in New York. There's a lot of big commercial properties that had, and not just New York, a lot of cities had some trouble when everybody's just moved out now. So you have a lot of vacancies and so forth. So the only thing I look at is dental offices. So I'm only speaking of dental offices, and the ones in my mind are pretty much standalone, and they are triple net leases. And I'll have Nick kind of explain a triple net lease to you guys.
Yeah, triple net leases basically are another obligation for the tenants on top of your base rent. In triple net leases, which are an industry standard for high visibility retail or high visibility office locations, you're going to be reimbursing the landlord for the property taxes, reimbursing the landlord for the property insurance, and reimbursing the landlord for all of the common area maintenance obligations, which are things like landscaping, parking lot lighting, parking lot maintenance, etc. So it's a overall gross occupancy cost that you need to take into account when you're leasing a new location. It's just as important to understand as your base rent. Because it's a monthly obligation that gets reconciled at the end of the year. And it's something just very important to make sure that you fully understand what you're getting into and how it can fluctuate.
They said Einstein said compound interest is the eighth wonder of the universe. I think triple net leases are the ninth. And They are. I mean, think about what you just said, Nick. The tenant is responsible for everything. They're responsible first for the rent, which covers the whatever the note is for the landlord, and it pays some profit. Then you pay the insurance, the taxes, and all the cam charges. And they're just sitting back, and most dentists, that's what we do. We pay triple net most of the time. That's the reason I wanted to become a dental landlord. I'm like, I need to be on the other side of this equation. Somehow I have to get on the other side. And matter of fact, when I sold Kids Dental Care, I had two offices still. I had already sold a couple of them, but I have two now that I receive nice checks every month, just bam. And every month they just keep coming. I don't have to worry about it. The only thing that I did leave out is the roof. I had to go back and repair a roof on one. And I think in the future, when I walk away, I don't want to do anything. I want the tenant, to cover everything, including the roof and structure. Well, you can't get them covered in structure.
Yeah, roof and structure are actually common landlord obligations, even in these net leases. So yeah, don't worry, you're not alone in that.
Yeah, the roof and the structure, I guess it just makes sense that the landlord would cover those. But yeah, those are things that at some point, I think most of you guys would one day want to become the owners, because there's so many, also the benefits, tax benefits, depreciation, appreciation, and what Nick was saying, the forced appreciation. And I'm going to just mention that somewhere I saw the term FARM, the acronym FARM, forced appreciation rent multiplier. And that is what you do when you find the right property. And hopefully I can put up some images of those properties that Nick put me onto and what we turn them into, because I like the art of changing them. I like Fresno is still brick. I like it, but I should have stuccoed that one, turn it into the piece of art that it has potential for. And I may someday do that. But especially Visalia, Porterville, those I turned them into a piece of art. And I've been doing that with buildings. And that's kind of like the thing I like doing at this point in my life. I turned it into something creative and we also a business at the same time. So I think those are some of the benefits you can get from doing stuff like that. A couple more, Nick, before we let you go. I know you have things to do. Comps. Talk about comps real quick. And doctors are looking for a place. How do comps come in?
Well, there's two different types of comps. There's sale comps and there's lease comps. Sale comps are a lot easier for us to track down, just because it's public data what somebody's paid for a property, and there's a lot of third-party software out there that helps us track those public sales that have taken place. Lease comps, there's not. It's kept away from the public eye more often than not, and there's not a good third-party software that helps track lease comps. So it's really the job of a great broker to know what's taken place in the market, know what's transacted. And if he doesn't know off the top of his head or have in his database what that lease comp was, he can reach out and hopefully has a friendly relationship with that landlord that did the lease or the broker that helped facilitate it, who doesn't mind sharing a little bit of information on it. So a little harder to track down the lease comps, but that's why you affiliate yourself with a good broker that can help you understand fair market values.
Good. Couple other things. Did you tell us what area, how far you cover, what area you cover?
Yeah, typically south to Bakersfield, north up to Sacramento, and then everything in between along the Central Coast. There's some exceptions to that rule, but that's a general broad brush at areas that we cover geographically.
Okay, because I want you to. Guys, I don't mind sharing Nick. He's one of my resources. He's part of my team. Reach out to him, and we'll post his number later. But the thing is, build a team, and your real estate agent is your team? You have to have a team if you're expanding and you're doing. We do mostly de novos, only de novos really, and I like finding the right buildings because I'm acquiring real estate for my portfolio. You know, for my family, put in my trust and so forth. I just like it, and I like as I say, I like the buildings to look nice. I like to do a piece of art. In California, we can do standalone, and I don't know if I was in New York, I don't know what we'd do. I probably wouldn't have as much fun because it's just I don't like. Well, I like the West Coast. I'll say it like that. Um, just a couple more questions here, Nick. There's one about ground leases. I was reading an article and it was saying about somehow was it San Francisco or New York, the tenants, the landlord, you know, the owner of the building that had the contract. But anyway, the ground lease was so high that as it, you know, the tenants started to leave, they found themselves underwater and so forth. Well, you guys talk about just ground leases. Most, I guess, most dental offices would not be, but I don't know. You probably could sell someone on a ground lease and then they build an office. Talk about something like that.
Yeah, we do ground lease transactions, plenty of them. If you think about the nature of the ground lease and where it's used, you've really just got to think about the underlying operator that would ground lease and why ground leases are important. And essentially, why they have come to be is that an operator wants to be in a very tight trade area where there's not a lot of land available, no opportunities for existing. They've basically exhausted all of their options, right? Because if you think about it, if you're somebody that can ground lease and build your own building at your cost, you can more than likely afford the real estate to build your building on, right? So you found yourself needing to be somewhere. The only guy or the only girl left at the dance doesn't want to sell and only wants to lease the property. So you're stuck essentially having to be in that trade area. It's an excellent location that you know that you're going to succeed in. So you'll take the risk, you'll ground lease it for a very long period of time, 20 plus years typically on a primary term with plenty of options to extend that when business is going well, and build your own building on that long-term lease. But really that's the nature of the ground lease, why you see it occur, and why it's important.
Wow. Yeah, I see them on corners, and I know especially restaurants that want to be there. What happens though if for some reason they have to fold? Do they have the option to lease it again or to get out of it and lease? I guess it would depend, but
yeah, it depends on the situation. Let's say you had a 20-year ground lease, the tenant does not exercise an option. Typically, the improvements would revert back to the landlord. There are exceptions to that rule. Depends how the lease reads, but that's more often than not what occurs. The landlord is in a great position there. They inherited a building that they didn't pay for, and they're getting rent on the land, which is more often than not a lot cheaper than land you'd be getting on your building. So you're going to be getting a pretty large rent increase in most instances in that particular scenario. So it's a great deal structure for landlords. It can be a great deal structure for tenants if it's a trade area that you have to get into and have failed at finding something that's existing or land that is available for purchase. If it's just a lack of it, it really is just a lack of quality product, and that's why it occurs.
Okay. And I like the matter of fact, the building we're looking at in Sacramento is a bank building. I had a bank building here in Hollywood, and the building in Fresno is a bank building, former bank building with the drive-through, so forth. And I was asking you about getting the vault out. In Fresno, we converted the vault because they left it in there and it still had the door on it. We took the door off and had to put in an air conditioner inside of it, and we just converted it to office space. But it can be expensive to get a vault taken out, but banks they have such a great location because they've already done all of the demographic searches and so forth. So just being in the area of a bank What do you do leases? You ever done leases for banks?
Yeah, we have done bank leasing,
Yeah,
suits, ground leases, existing building leases. We've done it all.
they yeah, because it's just pretty much it seems as though bank buildings are just ideal for the type of office I like to see. I guess they once they run their searches, it's just so demographically similar to what I need. I guess once I see there's a bank, it's like that I can do that. I don't even have to see it. Normally, if a bank is if it's a bank building, the demographics will normally fit because they want to be close to the residential areas. They want to be close to traffic, signalized corner, so forth. So it tends to work for me.
Yeah, you typically see them in major retail trade areas. They typically have convenient access points for customers to come in and make a quick bank transaction. Um, we have seen a lot of banks close locations with the emergence of online banking. So they're great targets in terms of operators looking for freestanding buildings in great trade areas. So we've
Yeah.
had a lot of success in transacting these former banks. But yeah, the vault is an interesting little wrinkle that you either have to find a creative use for or open your pocketbook and figure out how to remove it.
Yeah, and that's the one that we're working on. But yeah, you're right, and that's pretty much across the nation. Bank buildings are becoming available.
Yeah, and we've seen consolidations as well. Working on a Bank of America currently, that's a consolidation from two larger branches into one smaller branch. So we've seen a lot of that as well.
Yeah, and that's a thing is as the conditions change. Someone I'm trying to remember the quote was saying that an entrepreneur is almost obligated to seek out change and exploit it as an opportunity. And we're seeing some changes that are happening now, like these vacancies with banks, some of the things that's happening with the interest rates and so forth. It's opportunity, and we have to exploit it. Nick, I think you've done such a great job here for us, informing us about the real estate market. I don't want to keep you all day. I just want to thank you for coming on the show with us, and we look forward to working together and hopefully making a lot of money for other people as well. I want to share the ideas and tell them how to reach you again, Nick, if they have any question, want to get into the real estate market with you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lanier. It's been an absolute honor to be on your podcast. I'm easily reached. Nick at retailcalifornia.com is my email. My cell phone, 559-999-3712. Always available for anybody that has any questions or is looking for new space.
Fantastic, man. Look, go and enjoy your day. I know I know you don't know it, but I'm going to ask you and everybody is listening. The song is by the Little Rascals. It's called "It's a Beautiful Morning." It's a beautiful morning. Listen to it for several mornings and listen to the lyrics. Just check it out. It's a way to start your day. It's a beautiful morning. Nick has a 7-month-old newborn, and congratulations to Nick, new dad, young man, a boy. You said, right?
Yeah, Dawson, who's now 7 months old. He's developing a couple new teeth and a great personality. He's been just a great ray of sunshine for us.
Excellent, man. Thank you so much, Nick.
Yeah, thank you.